They served him divorce papers at their anniversary dinner. His wife's new boyfriend paid for the meal, like Marcus was the waiter. 50 people watched him sit there, frozen, while the woman he loved walked out with a man who called him severance pay for boring her to death. Nobody knew that in 72 hours, Marcus would inherit $3.7 billion. Nobody knew his ordinary uncle who just died was one of the richest men in Asia. And nobody, especially not his wife and her arrogant boyfriend, knew that Marcus now owned the building where they'd humiliated him, the company her boyfriend worked for, and the power to change all their lives forever. This is the story of the most silent, devastating revenge the Seattle elite had ever witnessed. Before we begin, I need to know, where are you watching this from? Drop your country in the comments right now. Globe showing Europe, Africa, whether you're in the Philippines, USA, UK, India, Canada, or anywhere else in the world. I want to see how far this story of karma and justice reaches. And while you're down there, hit that like button because what Marcus does next will have you screaming at your screen. Let's get this story to every corner of the globe. Drop your country now, and let's go. Fire. Marcus Chen's hands were sweating as he adjusted his tie. The same navy blue tie he'd worn to his wedding 5 years ago. It was Thursday evening, May 18th, and he'd taken the bus from their modest Capitol Hill apartment to downtown Seattle, transferring twice because parking at the Gilded Rose would have cost $40. $40 he'd already mentally allocated to this month's electric bill. The restaurant was everything Adriana had described in her increasingly frequent daydreams. Crystal chandeliers that looked like frozen waterfalls, marble floors that reflected the soft golden light, tables spaced far enough apart that conversations felt private but close enough that you could still see the designer labels on other diners' bags and watches. Marcus had made the reservation 3 months ago, saving $15 from each paycheck to afford this night. He worked as a senior bookkeeper at Morrison & Associates, a mid-sized accounting firm in Pioneer Square. The senior title sounded impressive but came with only a modest salary bump. He made $47,000 a year, which in Seattle felt like trying to fill the ocean with a teaspoon. But it was honest work, clean work, work where every number had to balance, where integrity mattered, where shortcuts led to consequences. His colleagues often joked that Marcus was too honest for accounting, which always made him uncomfortable because he never understood the alternative. Adriana arrived 20 minutes late, which wasn't unusual anymore. She'd been late to everything for the past 8 months. Late coming home, late responding to texts, late with explanations that felt increasingly hollow. She looked stunning. Her dark hair was styled in loose waves, her dress was new, midnight blue with a plunging neckline that caught every eye as she crossed the restaurant. Marcus recognized it from a boutique window downtown. The price tag had been $800. He'd never mentioned seeing it. "You look beautiful," he said, standing to pull out her chair. She barely glanced at him. "Thanks. You wore that tie again." "It's our anniversary tie," he said, trying to smile. "I thought. It's dated, Marcus. Everything you wear is dated." She picked up the wine menu, her new manicure, French tips with tiny crystals embedded in each nail, catching the light. "God, these prices. Did you check the menu before making the reservation?" "I wanted tonight to be special," he said quietly. 5 years, Adriana. "That's cotton anniversary," she interrupted, her voice flat. "How appropriate. Cheap and common." The words hit him like a slap, but he forced himself to breathe. "I got you something." He slid a small wrapped box across the table. Inside was a silver bracelet he'd found at an estate sale, vintage, delicate, with a tiny inscription inside. "True love never fades." It had taken him 3 months to save for it. Adriana opened it with the enthusiasm of someone unwrapping socks. She held the bracelet up with 2 fingers, like it might contaminate her. "It's sweet. In a thrift store kind of way. It's an antique," Marcus said, his voice smaller now. The woman who sold it said it belonged to her grandmother, who was married for 60 years. "How romantic," Adriana said, setting it aside without putting it on. A dead woman's jewelry. Marcus felt something crack inside his chest, small but definite, like the first fissure in ice before it breaks. The waiter appeared, young and efficient, with the kind of polished smile that comes from serving the wealthy. "Good evening. Can I start you with something to drink?" "Champagne," Adriana said immediately. "The Veuve Cliquot La Grande Dame." Marcus's throat tightened. He'd looked at the wine menu online. That bottle cost $320. Adriana, maybe we could. It's our anniversary, isn't it? Her eyes challenged him, dared him to be cheap in public. Unless you'd prefer, I order tap water? The champagne is fine, Marcus said, feeling the savings he'd accumulated evaporate in a single sentence. They sat in silence while the waiter left. Marcus tried to remember when she'd started looking at him with such open contempt. Was it after he'd been passed over for promotion last year? After her college roommate married a tech executive? After she'd started spending more time at that new gym in Bellevue? Adriana, he started carefully, I know things have been difficult. I know money is tight. But I'm working on the CPA certification, and Marcus, we need to talk. For words. That's all it took for his world to start tilting. Okay, he said, reaching for her hand across the table. She pulled it away. I'm not happy. I haven't been happy for a long time. I know, he said quickly. I know, and I'm sorry. I can work more hours. We can. It's not about hours. She looked at him then, really looked at him, and her eyes held something worse than anger. They held pity. It's about who you are, who you'll always be. What does that mean? Before she could answer, a man approached their table. Tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a suit that probably cost more than Marcus made in a month. His hair was perfectly styled, his watch was a Rolex, and his smile was the confident smirk of someone who'd never been told no. Is this him? The man asked, looking at Marcus the way someone might examine a stain on their shoe. Marcus's confusion must have shown on his face because Adriana sighed, as if his bewilderment was just another disappointment. Marcus, this is Clayton Westbrook. Clayton, my husband. Soon-to-be ex-husband, Clayton corrected, pulling out a chair and sitting down uninvited. He gestured to the waiter. Another glass for the champagne, please. Marcus's brain struggled to process what was happening. Adriana, what? She slid an envelope across the table. Manila, legal-sized, with the logo of a downtown law firm embossed in the corner. Divorce papers. I've already signed them. My lawyer says we can do this quickly since we don't have kids or significant shared assets. The restaurant noise faded to a dull roar. Marcus stared at the envelope like it was written in a foreign language. I don't understand. I'll make it simple, Clayton said, leaning back in his chair with casual cruelty. Adriana and I have been together for 8 months. We're moving in together next week. My penthouse in Bellevue has a view of Lake Washington. 3,000 square feet. She deserves better than a one-bedroom walk-up that smells like old carpet. 8 months. Marcus's mind raced backward. 8 months ago was September, when she'd joined that new gym, when she'd started working late, when she'd stopped kissing him goodbye in the morning. Adriana, Marcus's voice cracked. How could you? How could I? She leaned forward, her voice sharp. How could you, Marcus? 5 years of watching you clip coupons. 5 years of secondhand furniture and budgeting apps. 5 years of maybe next year, and we can't afford it. Do you know what my friends say when they ask where we're going on vacation? Do you know how it feels to say we're staying home every single time? I thought we were saving for a house, Marcus said weakly. You said you wanted. I want a life. Her voice rose, causing heads to turn at nearby tables. I want to go to nice restaurants without calculating the tip. I want to travel. I want to wear clothes that didn't come from a clearance rack. Clayton gives me that. Clayton doesn't make me feel poor every single day. The champagne arrived. Clayton poured 3 glasses with theatrical flair, pushing one toward Marcus. No hard feelings, buddy, Clayton said, raising his glass. You're a good guy, I'm sure. Just not her guy. Not anymore. Marcus stared at the golden liquid in his glass. His reflection wobbled in the curved surface, distorted and small. The papers are straightforward, Adriana continued, her voice businesslike now, as if discussing a grocery list. You keep the apartment. I've already moved my things out. The furniture is mostly yours anyway. I'm taking my car, my jewelry, my personal items. We split the bank account, though there's only about $3,000 in there. $2,847. Marcus corrected automatically, then hated himself for it. Even now, the numbers were precise in his mind. See, Adriana looked at Clayton. This is what I've been dealing with. He knows the exact balance down to the cent, but couldn't even remember to buy me flowers last month. Your birthday, Marcus whispered. I forgot your birthday. You forgot a lot of things, Marcus. You forgot what it's like to dream big. You forgot that I married you thinking you'd become something more. You forgot that love isn't enough when you're drowning in mediocrity. Clayton pulled out a money clip, gold, ostentatious, thick with $100 bills. He counted out 3 of them and dropped them on the table next to Marcus's untouched champagne. For the meal, Clayton said. And 4, 5 years of keeping her warm. Consider it severance pay for boring her to death. The laughter started then. First Clayton's, loud, braying, the sound of someone who'd won and knew it. Then Adriana's, lighter, musical, the sound of relief and escape. Then other diners, who'd been pretending not to listen but had heard every word, who saw a man being publicly dismantled and found entertainment in his pain. Marcus sat frozen. His hands rested on the table, one on either side of the envelope that contained the end of his marriage. He couldn't move, couldn't speak, couldn't process that this was real, that this was happening, that the woman he'd loved since they'd met at a community college literature class 7 years ago was looking at him like he was garbage to be discarded. Sign them by the end of the week, Adriana said, standing. She grabbed the bracelet he'd bought her and examined it one more time. For a moment, Marcus hoped, foolishly, desperately hoped, that she might soften, might remember who they used to be. Instead, she dropped it in his water glass. The splash was small, barely a sound, but Marcus watched the silver sink to the bottom, the inscription disappearing under ripples that refused to settle. Goodbye, Marcus, Adriana said. I hope you find someone who's content with scraping by. Someone whose dreams are as small as your paycheck. They walked out together, Clayton's hand on the small of her back, Adriana's laughter trailing behind them like perfume. The restaurant slowly returned to normal, conversations resuming, utensils clinking against plates, the world moving forward while Marcus remained frozen. The waiter approached cautiously. Sir, are you ready to order? Marcus looked down at the $300 bills. They felt obscene, contaminated, a payment for humiliation. No, he said quietly. Could you please bring the check for the champagne? The gentleman already covered it, sir. Of course he had. Clayton had paid for the champagne that was supposed to celebrate Marcus's anniversary, had paid for the restaurant where his marriage died, had paid to emphasize just how poor, how small, how utterly irrelevant Marcus was. Marcus stood on shaking legs. Every eye in the restaurant followed him as he walked toward the exit. A waiter sidestepped to avoid him. A hostess looked away, embarrassed. He was the entertainment now, the cautionary tale, the man who'd lost everything while surrounded by people who had everything. Outside, the Seattle evening was mild, the sky still holding the last traces of sunset. People walked past in clusters, laughing, living, oblivious to the fact that Marcus Chen's entire life had just collapsed in the span of 15 minutes. He walked, not toward the bus stop, not toward home, just walked. Through downtown, past Pioneer Square, along the waterfront where the cold wind off Elliott Bay cut through his inadequate suit jacket. His phone buzzed. A text from Adriana. Forgot to mention, I kept the ring. Pawned it last week. You weren't going to use it again anyway. His wedding ring. The one they'd bought together at a small jewelry store in Fremont. The one they'd saved for over 6 months to afford. The one she'd worn every day for 5 years and then removed without him even noticing. Marcus sat on a bench near the ferry terminal and watched the lights of Bainbridge Island shimmer across the dark water. Somewhere over there, people were having ordinary evenings, making dinner, watching TV, living lives that weren't actively falling apart. He pulled out the divorce papers. The legal language was cold, efficient, irreconcilable differences, equitable distribution of assets, petition for dissolution of marriage. His marriage reduced to 18 pages of single-spaced text. Marcus had always believed in fairness, in balance, in the idea that if you worked hard, if you were honest, if you loved someone with everything you had, the universe would somehow recognize that, would reward that. He'd been wrong. His phone buzzed again. Another text, this time from a number he didn't recognize. Mr. Chen, this is Victoria Hartwell from Hartwell and Associates. I'm calling regarding your uncle's estate. It's urgent that we meet as soon as possible. Please contact me at your earliest convenience. Uncle Jimmy. Marcus felt a fresh wave of grief. James Chun had died 2 weeks ago in Singapore. Heart attack, sudden, alone in his apartment. Marcus had only learned about it through a formal letter from an international law firm. There hadn't been a funeral, or if there had been, Marcus hadn't been invited. He'd only met Uncle Jimmy twice in his entire life. Once when he was 7, a strange man who'd appeared at their apartment in Tacoma spent 3 hours talking with Marcus's mother in rapid Mandarin, then left and never came back. The second time was at his mother's funeral 12 years ago. Uncle Jimmy had stood at the back of the chapel, a thin man in a plain black suit, and afterward had pressed an envelope into Marcus's hand. Inside had been $5,000 cash and a note. Your mother was proud of you. Stay honest. Marcus had used that money for his first year of community college. He'd never heard from Uncle Jimmy again. Now Uncle Jimmy was dead, and apparently there was an estate to settle. Probably some small apartment in Singapore that needed to be sold, maybe a few $1,000s to be divided among distant relatives. Marcus should have felt something, grief, loss, obligation, but he was too numb, too empty. He typed a response. Thank you for reaching out. I can meet Monday morning. Please send me the address. The reply came almost immediately. Excellent. Our offices are on the 47th floor of Columbia Center. Please arrive at 9 a.m. sharp. And Mr. Chen, come alone. This matter is highly confidential. Marcus frowned. Columbia Center? That was one of the tallest buildings in Seattle, where tech companies and international law firms rented space for tens of thousands per month. What was Uncle Jimmy's estate doing there? But the question felt distant, unimportant. Everything felt distant now. His phone showed 8:47 p.m. 3 hours ago, he'd been hopeful, naive, clutching a vintage bracelet and believing in the possibility of healing his marriage. Now he was sitting on a bench by the water, holding divorce papers, trying to remember what it felt like to matter to someone. The ferry horn sounded in the distance, low and mournful. Marcus watched it cross the black water, its lights reflecting like broken promises. He didn't know it yet, but his life was about to change in ways that would make this moment, this awful, humiliating, devastating moment, seem like the last scene before everything shifted. But for now, in this moment, Marcus Chen was just a bookkeeper who'd lost his wife, his dignity, and any remaining faith that the world was fair. For now, he was alone. Wait, before we go any further, I need you to do something for me. If you've ever had your heart broken by someone you trusted completely, someone you gave everything to, drop a heartbroken heart in the comments right now. And listen, I know this is painful. I know watching Marcus sit on that bench is breaking your heart too. But stay with me, because what happens on Monday morning at that lawyer's office is going to change everything. Hit that subscribe button right now, because you're not ready for what's coming. Trust me on this. Friday morning arrived like an unwelcome guest. Marcus woke up on his couch, he supposed it was now, still wearing yesterday's clothes. The apartment looked different in the harsh morning light. Emptier. The walls had rectangles of darker paint where Adriana's artwork had hung. The bookshelf had gaps where her novels used to be. The kitchen counter was missing her coffee maker, her fancy blender, her collection of artisanal spices that he'd never been allowed to touch. She'd left the cheap stuff. The IKEA furniture they'd bought when they first moved in together. The scratch dining table they'd found on Craigslist. The TV that was so old it still had a VHS player built in. She'd taken anything with value and left him with the remains of their poverty. His phone showed 17 missed calls from his mother, 5 from his sister Emily, 3 from his coworker David. Word had spread somehow. Maybe someone from the restaurant knew someone who knew someone. In Seattle's interconnected social web, humiliation traveled fast. He couldn't face the calls yet. Instead, he showered, dressed in clean clothes, and sat at his dining table with a cup of instant coffee. The divorce papers stared at him, waiting. Marcus had always been good with documents. As a bookkeeper, he'd reviewed thousands of contracts, agreements, ledgers. Numbers and legal language made sense to him in a way human emotions never quite had. He read every word. Twice. The settlement was straightforward because they had nothing to settle. Adriana would take her car, a used Honda Civic they still owed $6,000 on. She'd take her personal belongings. They'd split the bank account 50/50ths, which meant each of them would walk away with about $1,423. She didn't want alimony. Didn't want anything from him, really, except his signature acknowledging that their marriage was over. There was something almost merciful about that. At least she wasn't trying to bleed him dry. At least she was just walking away clean, leaving him with the apartment and the furniture and the shame. Marcus picked up a pen. His hand hovered over the signature line. 5 years. One signature. That's all it took to erase half a decade of shared meals and inside jokes and lazy Sunday mornings. He thought about their wedding day, tiny ceremony at the courthouse, 17 guests, dinner afterward at a Thai restaurant in Georgetown. Adriana had worn a cream-colored dress from Nordstrom Rack. He'd worn the same navy suit he'd worn to the restaurant last night. New then, with a boutonniere his sister had made from grocery store flowers. They'd been happy. Hadn't they been happy? Or had he just been oblivious? Too focused on budgets and bills to notice that the woman he loved was withering beside him, starving for something he couldn't provide? The pen touched paper. He started to sign, then stopped. Something his mother used to say, back when she was alive, back when she tried to teach him lessons he'd been too young to understand. Don't make permanent decisions in temporary emotions, Marcus. Wait 3 days. If it still feels right, then act. He set down the pen. 3 days. He could give himself that, at least. The weekend passed in a fog. Marcus didn't leave the apartment. He ordered food delivery, ignored phone calls, and sat at his computer researching divorce law in Washington state. He learned about community property, about mandatory waiting periods, about how courts divided assets. He also found himself searching for Adriana's social media. She'd blocked him on most platforms, but he found her Instagram through a mutual friend's account. She'd already changed her relationship status to in a relationship with Clayton Westbrook. There were photos of them together, at an expensive restaurant Marcus didn't recognize, at what looked like a weekend getaway in the San Juan Islands, posed in front of Clayton's black Mercedes. In every photo, Adriana looked radiant, happier than Marcus could remember seeing her in years. Her smile was genuine, her eyes bright. She was wearing clothes Marcus had never seen, designer brands, bold colors, nothing like the careful, budget-conscious wardrobe she'd maintained during their marriage. It hurt more than he expected. Not just the betrayal, but the evidence that she'd been right. She was happier without him. Clayton could give her things Marcus never could. Maybe he really had been holding her back. Maybe love wasn't enough. Maybe dreams did matter more than dedication. A Saturday night, he found himself looking at the business card Victoria Hartwell had sent via email. Hartwell and Associates, International Estate Management, and Private Law. The logo was subtle, expensive, the kind of minimalist design that screamed wealth. What could Uncle Jimmy possibly have? The man had lived simply, worked as what? Marcus realized he didn't actually know what Uncle Jimmy had done for a living. His mother had never talked about her brother much, and when she did, it was always in vague terms. He works in business. He travels a lot. He prefers to be private. Marcus pulled up Google and searched, James Chen Singapore. Thousands of results. Most were for different people. James Chun was a common name. But then, buried on page 3, he found something interesting. A 15-year-old article from the Straits Times, Singapore's main newspaper. Silent partner in tech acquisition identified as J. Zhao Chun. The article was brief, technical, about a major acquisition in the semiconductor industry. Most of it went over Marcus's head, but one paragraph stood out. Industry insiders have identified the previously anonymous majority stakeholder as J. Zhao Chun, a notoriously private investor whose holdings include significant stakes in at least 12 major technology firms across Asia and North America. Chun, who operates through a complex network of trusts and holding companies, has managed to remain largely out of public view despite an estimated personal fortune that analysts place in the billions. He's a ghost, says one former business associate. You never see him at events, never read quotes from him, never even see a photograph. But his fingerprints are on half the major deals in the Pacific Rim. Marcus read the paragraph 3 times. Billions. Zhao Chun. His mother's maiden name had been Chun Zhao Wei. If she'd anglicized it, flipped the order for Western conventions. No, that was insane. Uncle Jimmy lived in a modest apartment, dressed in plain clothes, had no security, no entourage, nothing that suggested wealth. The man Marcus had met at his mother's funeral looked like a retired teacher, not a billionaire. But the article was specific, and Victoria Hartwell's office was on the 47th floor of Columbia Center, and she'd said the matter was highly confidential. Marcus spent the rest of Saturday night searching for more information, but J. Zhao Chun was, as the article said, a ghost. No photos, no interviews, no social media presence, just occasional mentions in business journals, always in passive voice, always anonymous, always described as elusive or private or reclusive. By Sunday afternoon, Marcus had convinced himself he was being ridiculous. Uncle Jimmy was probably just a small investor, maybe had a few $100,000 to leave to distant relatives. The lawyer's office was probably just nice because they handled multiple clients, not because Uncle Jimmy himself was wealthy. But doubt lingered. Why the urgency? Why the confidentiality? Why Monday morning sharp at 9 a.m.? Sunday evening, he finally called his sister. Marcus. Emily's voice was frantic. Where have you been? I've been calling for 2 days. I know. I'm sorry. I just needed time to process. Process? Marcus, Mom's friend Janet said she saw you at the Gilded Rose with Adriana and some other man, and that Adriana was laughing while you looked like you were dying, and then you walked out alone. And, is it true? Did she really serve you divorce papers in public? Yes. Emily's silence was worse than her words had been. Then, quietly, I never liked her. You came to our wedding. You gave a toast about true love. I gave a toast about you, Marcus. About how you deserved someone who saw you. She never saw you. She saw a credit card that kept declining. The words should have hurt, but instead they felt oddly comforting. At least someone was angry on his behalf. At least someone thought he deserved better. I'm meeting with a lawyer tomorrow morning, Marcus said. About Uncle Jimmy's estate. Oh, Marcus, I'm so sorry. I know you two weren't close, but still. Did Mom ever talk about him? About what he did for work? No, not really. What? Just curious. He left some kind of estate to settle. The lawyer sounded formal. Official. Well, maybe it's enough to help you get back on your feet. God knows you could use something good right now. They talked for another 20 minutes. Emily offered to come stay with him, but he declined. He needed to be alone. Needed to think. Needed to prepare for whatever Monday morning would bring. That night, he had a dream about his mother. She was standing in their old Tacoma apartment, younger than he remembered, before the cancer had hollowed her out. She was cooking something, dumplings, maybe, the smell filling the dream with warmth and safety. Marcus, she said in Mandarin, a language he barely understood anymore. Your uncle loved you very much. He wanted you to be ready. Ready for what? For what you are. He woke up at 3 a.m., the dream already fading, the words making less sense in the darkness. But something about them lingered, like his mother was trying to tell him something important, something he needed to understand. Marcus got up and looked out his window. Seattle's skyline glittered in the distance, a forest of lights and steel and ambition. Somewhere out there, Adriana was sleeping in Clayton's penthouse, probably in sheets that cost more than Marcus's entire bed frame. Somewhere out there, people were living lives of luxury and ease while Marcus counted pennies and signed away his marriage on payment plans. He thought about the divorce papers sitting on his dining table, about the signature line that still waited, blank. 3 days, his mother had said. Wait 3 days. Monday morning would be day 3. He'd sign them after the lawyer meeting, after he settled Uncle Jimmy's estate, after he closed this chapter of his life and figured out how to start the next one as a divorced, 32-year-old bookkeeper with $1,423 to his name. Marcus set his alarm for 6 a.m. He'd shower, shave, put on his best suit, the same suit he'd worn Thursday night, the same suit from his wedding, the only suit he owned, and he'd go meet Victoria Hartwell and learn about Uncle Jimmy's small apartment and modest savings and maybe, if he was lucky, a few $1,000s to help with the transition. Then he'd sign the papers, close the door on Adriana and Clayton and the life he'd failed to build. Move forward, whatever that meant. He didn't sleep the rest of the night. Just lay there, watching the sky slowly lighten from black to dark blue to the pale gray of a Seattle morning, thinking about ghosts and second chances and the strange weight of decisions made in the dark. Monday was coming. Everything was about to change. He just didn't know it yet. Columbia Center pierced the Seattle skyline like a declaration of power. 76 stories of steel and glass, the tallest building in the city, home to tech giants, international law firms, and the kind of wealth that operated in its own stratosphere, disconnected from the ground-level reality of bus schedules and budget grocery stores. Marcus stood on the sidewalk at 8:45 a.m., looking up at the building with growing unease. The plaza fountain burbled expensively behind him. People in $1,000 suits streamed past, moving with the confidence of those who'd never worried about rent. He'd worn his navy suit again, The anniversary suit, the wedding suit, the only suit. He'd done his best with it. Dry cleaned it over the weekend at a 24-hour laundromat, polished his shoes until they almost looked new, ironed his white shirt 3 times to erase every wrinkle. But standing here, surrounded by Seattle's elite, he felt like a child playing dress-up. A woman in Louboutin heels clicked past, talking rapidly on a phone about quarterly projections and stakeholder meetings. Her watch probably cost more than Marcus's annual salary. She didn't glance at him. None of them did. He was invisible here, a ghost haunting a world he didn't belong to. Stop it, he told himself. You're here for Uncle Jimmy. You're here to settle an estate. This is just a meeting. He pushed through the revolving doors into a lobby that looked like it had been designed to intimidate. Marble floors stretched toward infinity. A chandelier, actual crystal, not the cheap imitation kind, sparkled 3 stories above. Security guards in suits nicer than Marcus's stood at attention near turnstiles that required key cards to pass. Marcus approached the reception desk, where a young woman with perfect makeup and a headset was managing multiple calls simultaneously. Good morning. I have a 9 a.m. appointment with Victoria Hartwell at Hartwell & Associates. She glanced at her computer. Name: Marcus Chen. Something changed in her expression. Just a flicker, but Marcus caught it. Surprise, recognition, maybe curiosity. She typed something, then her eyes widened slightly. Of course, Mr. Chen. You're expected. Take the west elevators to the 47th floor. Miss Hartwell's assistant will meet you there. She handed him a temporary key card. Please keep this with you at all times. The west elevators were tucked behind an architectural wall that separated them from the standard elevators. Marcus swiped his card and stepped into a glass elevator that offered a panoramic view of the city as it climbed. Seattle spread out below him, Elliott Bay to the west, the Cascade Mountains beyond, the neighborhoods where he'd lived his entire life suddenly looking small and distant. The elevator rose in silence. 10th floor, 20th floor, 30th floor. At each level, Marcus felt further removed from anything familiar, ascending into rarefied air where different rules applied, where people like him rarely ventured. 47th floor. The doors opened onto a reception area that could have been mistaken for a high-end art gallery. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered impossible views. Modern art hung on walls painted in subtle grays and creams. Fresh orchids, real ones, decorated a mahogany desk that looked hand-carved. A woman in her 30s stood waiting. Perfectly tailored charcoal suit, auburn hair in a professional bun, smile that was warm but measured. Mr. Chen, I'm Patricia Song, Miss Hartwell's executive assistant. Thank you for arriving promptly. May I offer you coffee? Tea? Water? I'm fine, thank you. Please, follow me. Patricia led him through a corridor lined with closed doors. Marcus glimpsed other offices, lawyers hunched over documents, assistants managing multiple screens, conference rooms with views that suggested serious money and serious power. They stopped at double doors at the end of the corridor. Patricia knocked once, then opened them. Ms. Hartwell, Mr. Chun has arrived. Excellent. Thank you, Patricia. The office was stunning. Corner views facing both the sound and the mountains. A desk that looked like it belonged in a museum. Built-in bookcases filled with leather-bound volumes. But what struck Marcus most was the woman standing by the window. Victoria Hartwell was probably in her early 60s, with silver hair cut in a sharp bob and eyes that assessed Marcus in the 3 seconds it took him to cross the threshold. She wore a burgundy suit that was elegant without being ostentatious, and when she extended her hand, her grip was firm, professional. Mr. Chun, thank you for coming on such short notice. Please sit. She gestured to a seating area by the window, leather chairs that probably cost more than Marcus's car. Between them sat a low table with a leather portfolio, the kind that suggested serious legal documents within. I'm sorry for your loss, Victoria said, settling into the chair across from him. Your uncle was a remarkable man. Thank you. Though I have to admit, I didn't know him well. We only met twice. I'm aware. James was very intentional about that. Victoria folded her hands in her lap. Mr. Chun, Marcus, if I may, what I'm about to tell you will likely come as a shock. I ask that you let me explain everything before you respond. Can you do that? Marcus's mouth went dry. Of course. Victoria opened the portfolio and removed several documents, arranging them on the table between them with the precision of someone who'd done this many times before. Your uncle, James Chen, was born Chen Xiaoming in Taipei, Taiwan, in 1955. He immigrated to the United States in 1985, following your mother, who had arrived 2 years earlier. Are you familiar with this history? Some of it. My mother didn't talk much about Taiwan. Understandable. The family situation was complicated. James and your mother were the youngest of 6 children in a wealthy industrial family. Their father, your grandfather, owned textile factories and shipping companies throughout Southeast Asia. When he died in 1984, the inheritance tore the family apart. Lawsuits, betrayals. Siblings who'd once been close became bitter enemies fighting over assets. Victoria pulled out a black and white photograph. Young James, maybe 30 years old, standing on a dock somewhere tropical. He looked haunted. James watched wealth destroy his family. He saw what greed could do to love, to loyalty, to basic human decency. So when the legal battles finally settled and he received his inheritance, approximately $47 million, he made a decision. He would leave Taiwan, start fresh in America, and never let wealth corrupt him the way it had corrupted his siblings. She pulled out another document, this one dense with legal language. Your mother made the same choice, though her inheritance was smaller. She changed her name to Catherine Chen, moved to Tacoma, worked as a bookkeeper. Victoria smiled slightly, and raised you to value honesty and hard work over material wealth. James admired that enormously. Marcus felt like he was watching a documentary about strangers. My mother worked as a bookkeeper because she had to. We were poor. No, Marcus. Your mother worked as a bookkeeper because she chose to. She had millions in a trust account she never touched. When she got sick, when the cancer treatments were expensive, she could have accessed that money at any time. She chose not to. The words didn't make sense. Marcus remembered his mother's final years, the cheap apartment, the medical debt, the way she'd apologized for being a burden, for costing too much to keep alive. Why? Because she wanted you to understand the value of money earned, not given. She wanted you to develop character without the corrupting influence of inherited wealth. And because she trusted that James would ensure you'd be taken care of when the time was right. Victoria removed another document. This one had corporate letterhead, Zenith Holdings International. Your uncle took his $47 million inheritance and invested it wisely. Very wisely. He had a gift for identifying emerging technologies before they became mainstream. In 1987, he invested in a small semiconductor company in Singapore. In 1993, he became a silent partner in fiber optic telecommunications. In 1998, he invested heavily in what would become cloud computing infrastructure. She laid out document after document. Corporate filings, stock certificates, property deeds, each one representing millions, tens of millions, hundreds of millions. James operated through holding companies and trusts. He lived modestly, a small apartment in Singapore, another in Vancouver, basic clothes, no luxury items. He avoided publicity, declined interviews, used intermediaries for all business dealings. To the world, Zhao Chun was a ghost. But his portfolio grew. Victoria's voice softened. Your uncle watched you, Marcus. From a distance, but carefully. He attended your high school graduation, sat in the back, left before you could see him. He was at your college ceremony. He knew when you got married. He knew about your job, your salary, your struggles. And he was very, very proud of you. Marcus's throat tightened. I don't understand. If he was proud, why didn't he help? Why did he let me struggle? Because helping would have robbed you of something precious. The opportunity to become who you are without wealth defining you. He watched you turn down opportunities to cheat, to cut corners, to compromise your integrity for money. He watched you choose honesty even when it cost you promotions. He watched you remain faithful to your wife even when she. Victoria paused delicately. Even when circumstances were difficult. She placed one final document on the table. This one was different, handwritten, on expensive stationery, dated 2 months before Uncle Jimmy's death. To my nephew Marcus Chen, you don't know me, but I know you. I've watched you grow from an earnest boy into an honorable man. Your mother and I made choices that may have seemed cruel. To let you struggle, to withhold help, to remain distant. But we did so out of love. Wealth reveals what was always there. A good person with money becomes a philanthropist. A selfish person with money becomes a tyrant. We needed to know who you would become without the distortion of inherited fortune. You passed every test without knowing you were being tested. You remained honest when dishonesty would have been profitable. You remained kind when cruelty would have been easier. You counted every penny not from greed, but from respect for what money represents. Time, work, human effort. Now you are ready. The fortune I've built was never for me. It was always for you. But I gave it to you at the right moment. Not when you were young and might have been corrupted, but when you were formed, complete, certain of who you are. Use it wisely. Remember what poverty taught you. Help others who struggle as you struggled. And know that your mother and I both believed in you, even when we couldn't show it. With love and pride. Uncle Jimmy. Marcus couldn't breathe. The words on the page blurred as tears he'd been fighting finally broke through. Victoria waited in respectful silence. When Marcus finally looked up, she continued, "Your uncle passed away on May 2nd. His will is ironclad, contested by no one, because there is no one else to contest it. He had no spouse, no children, no siblings still living. Your mother predeceased him. You are his only surviving relative." She removed one final document from the portfolio. This one was a summary, a single page with numbers so large Marcus's bookkeeper brain struggled to process them. "Marcus, your uncle left you everything. His entire estate, held in an irrevocable trust with you as the sole beneficiary. The trust includes direct ownership of 17 major commercial properties across North America and Asia, valued at approximately $890 million. Majority or significant minority stakes in 32 technology companies, collectively valued at approximately $2.4 billion. Private equity investments in sustainable energy, biotechnology, and medical research, valued at approximately $680 million. Cash, bonds, and liquid assets totaling approximately $430 million. Art, collectibles, and personal effects valued at approximately $15 million. Victoria looked at Marcus directly. "As of this morning, accounting for market fluctuations, your total net worth is approximately $3.7 billion. You are, Marcus, one of the wealthiest individuals in the Pacific Northwest." The number didn't compute. $3.7 billion. That was more money than most people saw in 100 lifetimes. That was nation-state money. That was change-the-world money. That was impossible. I can't. Marcus couldn't form words. Victoria's expression was gentle but firm. "I know this is overwhelming. But it's real, Marcus. It's yours. The trust is structured to protect you from taxation, from lawsuits, from anyone who might try to take advantage. There are provisions for your security, your privacy, your future. James spent years planning this transfer." She pulled out another folder. "I've prepared comprehensive briefings on every asset, every investment, every property. You'll need to meet with the financial team, the legal team, the security consultants. But we'll take it slowly, one step at a time." Marcus stared at his hands. The same hands that had clipped coupons yesterday. The same hands that had held divorce papers. The same hands that counted every dollar because every dollar mattered. "My wife," he said suddenly. "My wife left me Thursday night. She served me divorce papers at our anniversary dinner because I couldn't afford the life she wanted." Victoria's face didn't change. "I know. I'm sorry. She said I was financially irrelevant. Her new boyfriend threw $300 at me like a tip. I know that too. Word travels in certain circles, and Seattle's wealth community is small." Victoria leaned forward. "Marcus, what happened to you Thursday night was cruel. But it was also, in a way, a gift. A gift. Your wife showed you who she was. Not who you wanted her to be, but who she actually was. She loved what money could buy, not the man who might someday buy it. If this inheritance had come 6 months ago, before the affair, before the betrayal, you'd never have known. She'd still be by your side, and you'd believe it was love." The words hit Marcus like cold water. He thought about Adriana's Instagram photos, about Clayton's penthouse, about the way she'd looked at the vintage bracelet with such contempt. "The settlement," Marcus said slowly. "She's asking for half of everything. Of what she knows about, yes. But she filed for divorce on May 16th, and your uncle's estate wasn't transferred to you until May 19th, after the petition was filed. Under Washington state law, any assets you acquire after the filing date are not subject to community property division." Marcus's head shot up. "You're saying?" "I'm saying that legally, ethically, and completely legitimately, your wife has no claim to any part of your inheritance. None. Not $1. Victoria's smile was slight, but satisfied. Sometimes, Marcus, the universe has excellent timing. The implications crashed over Marcus like a wave. Adriana thought she was divorcing a poor bookkeeper who'd split $3,000 in a bank account and walk away with nothing. She had no idea that 3 days after serving him papers, Marcus had become a billionaire. She had no idea that the man she'd humiliated in front of 50 people could now buy that restaurant, could buy the entire building, could buy 100 buildings just like it without affecting his net worth. What happens now? Marcus asked, his voice strange in his own ears. Now, Victoria said, you decide. The inheritance is yours, uncontested and protected. But how you use it, how you respond to those who've hurt you, how you move forward, that's entirely up to you. James's letter says to use it wisely. What that means is your choice. Marcus looked out the window. Seattle sprawled below, the same city he'd lived in his entire life, suddenly looking different. Not because the city had changed, but because everything about his relationship to it had transformed in the span of 30 minutes. He thought about Adriana and Clayton, laughing as they walked out of the Gilded Rose. About the divorce papers waiting on his dining table and signed. About the signature line that would finalize his humiliation or become something else entirely. He thought about his mother, working as a bookkeeper when she had millions hidden away. About Uncle Jimmy, living in modest apartments while controlling billions in assets. About the choice they'd made to let him struggle, to let him become who he was without wealth warping him. And he thought about the lesson embedded in that choice. That who you are matters more than what you have, but sometimes what you have can reveal who everyone else is. Ms. Hartwell, Marcus said slowly, I need to ask you something. Of course. That restaurant where my wife served me divorce papers, the Gilded Rose. Who owns it? Victoria pulled out a tablet, typed for a moment, then smiled. It's part of a hospitality group called Emerald Dining Collective. They own 17 upscale restaurants in Seattle, Portland, and Vancouver. And who owns Emerald Dining Collective? More typing. Then Victoria's smile widened. A holding company called Pacific Northwest Hospitality Partners, which is majority owned by Zenith Holdings International, which is now owned by you, Marcus. You own that restaurant. You own all 17 restaurants. Marcus felt something click into place in his chest. Not revenge, exactly. Not cruelty. But justice. Balance. The universe finally making its ledgers align. I'm going to need a few days to process this, he said. To understand the full scope of what I'm dealing with. But Ms. Hartwell, Victoria, I have a signature to make first. Divorce papers to sign. And I think I know exactly how I want to do it. Victoria's expression was neutral, professional, but Marcus caught a glimmer of something in her eyes. Approval, maybe. Or recognition that her client wasn't going to be passive in his new life. Whatever you need, Marcus. I'm here to help. They spent the next hour going through basics. Bank accounts, security protocols, communication procedures. Victoria assigned him a personal assistant, a financial advisor, and a security consultant. She gave him access to a company car service, a private phone line, and a suite at the Fairmont Olympic while he figured out his living situation. But the whole time, Marcus's mind was elsewhere. He was thinking about Thursday night. About the envelope with divorce papers. About Clayton's $100 bills and Adriana's contemptuous laughter. About how satisfying it would be to walk back into that world, not as the invisible bookkeeper, but as the man who owned it. Not to be cruel. Not to humiliate them the way they'd humiliated him. Just to show them what they'd thrown away. Just to let them see what contempt had cost them. Just to balance the books. Stop right there. Are you feeling what I'm feeling right now? $3.7 billion. Let that sink in. $3.7 billion. If you're sitting there with your jaw on the floor, if you're thinking about what you would do with that kind of money, drop a fire in the comments right now. And listen, we're about to get to the good part. We're about to see Marcus walk back into that restaurant, into Adriana's world, and flip everything upside down. You're not ready. I promise you're not ready. Hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, because what happens next is going to be legendary. Marcus spent Tuesday in a daze. Victoria had arranged for him to stay at the Fairmont Olympic, a historic hotel downtown that he'd walked past 1,000 times but never imagined entering. His suite had marble bathrooms, a separate living room, and views of the Olympic Mountains that made his former apartment look like a storage closet. The hotel staff treated him differently than anyone had treated him in his entire life. The concierge knew his name before he introduced himself. The front desk manager personally showed him to his room. When he mentioned he might want dinner, a private chef appeared within 30 minutes offering to prepare anything he desired. It was surreal, disorienting, like he'd stepped through a portal into an alternate dimension where he mattered, where his comfort was someone's priority, where yes, sir, and of course, sir, replaced the casual dismissal he'd grown accustomed to. Wednesday morning, Patricia Song arrived at 8 a.m. with 3 men in expensive suits. Mr. Chen, this is David Hernandez, your personal financial advisor, Robert Kim, your attorney, and James Lynch, your security consultant. They spent 4 hours walking Marcus through the basics. David explained the investment portfolio, which companies were thriving, which needed attention, how the passive income alone would generate approximately $180 million annually before taxes. Robert reviewed the legal protections in place, the trust structure, the ways Marcus's wealth was shielded from lawsuits and liability. James discussed security protocols, explaining that people with Marcus's net worth required precautions most people never considered. You're a target now, James said bluntly. He was ex-Secret Service, calm and direct. Kidnapping, blackmail, social engineering scams. We need to protect you. I don't feel like a target, Marcus said. I feel like a guy who was eating ramen for dinner last week. That's the most dangerous time, James replied. When you don't yet understand what you have. Let us help you adjust. By Wednesday afternoon, Marcus had signed more documents than he'd signed in his entire life. He had new bank accounts with balances that made his head spin. He had credit cards with no limits. He had access to private jets, luxury cars, and properties around the world. But he didn't want any of it. Not really. What he wanted was in that envelope on his dining table. The divorce papers. The signature line. The closing of one chapter and the strategic opening of another. Thursday morning, exactly 1 week after the Gilded Rose humiliation, Marcus made a decision. Patricia, I need you to arrange something for me. The transformation took place at a boutique men's store in Belltown that Marcus had never heard of. No prices in the window. Appointment only. The kind of place where they measured you 17 different ways and remembered your name decades later. The proprietor, an elegant man named Julian, treated Marcus's wardrobe needs like an artist approaching a canvas. We're not trying to make you look rich, Julian explained, draping fabric samples over Marcus's shoulders. We're trying to make you look like yourself, but elevated. Confident. Someone who knows exactly who he is. 3 hours later, Marcus barely recognized himself in the mirror. Italian suit in charcoal gray, perfectly tailored to his frame. French cuffed shirt in crisp white. Silk tie in burgundy that somehow made his features look sharper, more defined. Shoes that were so well made they felt like air. But it wasn't the clothes that transformed him. It was something else. The way he stood straighter. The way his eyes looked clearer. The way he moved with less apology, less accommodation. There, Julian said with satisfaction. That's the real you. The clothes just help everyone else see it. Marcus also visited a high-end watch dealer. He'd been wearing a $40 Timex his entire adult life. Now he looked at pieces that cost more than cars. What speaks to you? The dealer asked. Marcus's eye caught on a vintage Patek Philippe. Simple. Elegant. The kind of watch that didn't scream wealth, but whispered it to those who knew. That one, he said. It was my uncle's favorite brand. The dealer smiled. Excellent choice. This particular piece is from 1985, a landmark year for the company. It's not the most expensive watch here, but it's one of the most significant. Marcus bought it without asking the price. Later, he'd learn it cost $85,000. But in that moment, wearing it on his wrist, he felt connected to Uncle Jimmy in a way he never had before. The watch had weight. History. A story that mattered. Just like the story Marcus was about to write. Friday afternoon, Marcus sat in his hotel suite with Victoria, David, and Robert, laying out his plan. I want to respond to the divorce petition, he said. But I want to do it strategically. Robert nodded. We can file a counterpetition, contest the terms, drag this out for months. No, Marcus interrupted. I don't want to be cruel. I don't want to humiliate her the way she humiliated me. I just want balance. Balance how? Victoria asked. Marcus pulled out his phone and showed them Adriana's divorce petition. She was asking for half of the community property, which, given what she knew, amounted to about $1,500 and half the furniture. Washington is a no-fault divorce state, Robert explained. But it's also a community property state. Anything acquired during the marriage is split 50-50ths. But the key word is during. Your inheritance came after she filed, so it's exempt. What if she finds out about the money later? Marcus asked. What if she tries to challenge the settlement? She can try, Robert said, but she'd lose. The timing is crystal clear. However, he paused. If you want to be extra cautious, we could include specific language in the settlement. Something that makes it clear she's aware she's not entitled to any future inheritances or income. Marcus thought about this. About Adriana seeing the settlement paperwork. About her assuming it was just standard legal language. About her signing away rights she didn't even know existed. Do it, he said. Make the settlement generous enough that she won't question it. Maybe $10,000 instead of $1,500. She'll think I'm being nice. She'll sign without reading carefully. That's clever, Victoria said, and Marcus caught the approval in her voice. And the restaurant, Marcus continued. The Gilded Rose. I want to go back there. For what purpose? David asked carefully. To sign the papers. In public. The same way she served them to me. Marcus's voice was calm, measured. I'm not going to embarrass her. I'm not going to cause a scene. I'm just going to return the gesture. Show her that I'm okay. That I'm moving forward. James, the security consultant, frowned. If you're going back to that restaurant, you need protection. At minimum, I'll have 2 of my people there in plain clothes. And you should arrive via the company car. The company car? Black Mercedes S-Class. It's registered to one of your holding companies. Driver, tinted windows, the works. If you're going to make an appearance, make it count. Marcus smiled. Okay, let's do this properly. They spent the next hour planning every detail. Robert would prepare the counter-petition and settlement agreement. Patricia would make a reservation at the Gilded Rose for Saturday evening, the same time slot Marcus and Adriana had sat in 1 week ago. James would coordinate security, and David would ensure Marcus had access to whatever he needed. One more thing, Marcus said. Clayton Westbrook, my wife's boyfriend. Victoria mentioned he's a real estate developer? Yes, Victoria said, pulling up information on her tablet. Westbrook Development Group. Medium-sized operation, specializes in commercial properties. What? I want to know everything about his business. His leases, his investors, his projects. Everything. Victoria's expression didn't change, but Marcus saw understanding flicker in her eyes. I'll have a full report by tomorrow morning. As the team left, Victoria lingered. Marcus, she said carefully, I want you to remember something. Revenge feels good in the moment, but it doesn't heal the wound. Don't let this define you. I'm not looking for revenge, Marcus said honestly. I'm looking for closure. For balance. She walked out of my life thinking I was worthless. I just want her to know that wasn't true. That I had value all along, even when she couldn't see it. Victoria studied him for a long moment, then nodded. Your uncle would be proud. He always believed the best revenge was living well. After she left, Marcus sat by the window and watched Seattle prepare for evening. Somewhere out there, Adriana was planning her new life. Somewhere out there, Clayton was congratulating himself on stealing another man's wife. Somewhere out there, 50 people who'd watched Marcus's humiliation were going about their lives, having forgotten him entirely. By tomorrow night, some of them would remember. Saturday arrived with unusual sunshine for May. Marcus woke early, worked out in the hotel gym, and had breakfast sent to his room. He reviewed the settlement papers Robert had prepared. They were perfect, generous enough to seem kind, specific enough to protect him completely. At 6 p.m., James knocked on his door. Ready, Mr. Chen? Marcus adjusted his tie, a different one, deep blue this time, and nodded. Ready. The Mercedes was waiting in the hotel's private garage. The driver, a professional man named Thomas, held the door open. Good evening, sir. We'll take the scenic route. Arrive at the Gilded Rose at 6:45. Security team is already in position. As they drove through downtown, Marcus felt oddly calm. No anxiety, no second thoughts. Just a quiet certainty that this was right, that this was necessary, that the books needed to balance. They pulled up to the Gilded Rose at exactly 6:45 p.m. The restaurant glowed warmly in the evening light, its windows offering glimpses of well-dressed diners and expensive wine. Thomas opened Marcus's door. I'll be right here when you're ready, sir. Marcus stepped out onto the sidewalk. The same sidewalk where he'd stood 1 week ago, humiliated and alone, trying to figure out how to take the bus home because even a cab felt too expensive. Now he was arriving in a $150,000 car, wearing a $6,000 suit, carrying documents that would change everything. He walked through the front door. The hostess looked up with her professional smile. "Good evening. Welcome to." She stopped, her eyes widening slightly. People didn't usually arrive at the Gilded Rose looking like Marcus looked now. "Do you have a reservation?" "Marcus Chen. Table for one, please." She checked her computer, and Marcus saw a recognition flicker. The name was in the system from his call last week, connected to the anniversary disaster. The hostess probably remembered him, or if she didn't, she'd heard the story from the servers. "Of course, Mr. Chen. Right this way." She led him through the dining room, and Marcus felt eyes following him. Not with pity this time, with curiosity, with interest. The subtle assessment that wealthy people made of each other, trying to place him, to categorize him, to determine if he was worth knowing. The hostess seated him at a table by the window, not the same table as last week, but close enough. The view looked out over Elliott Bay, where ferries crossed back and forth like slow-moving stars. "Your server will be right with you. Can I bring you anything while you wait?" "Scotch, please. Whatever you recommend." She nodded and disappeared. Marcus sat back and surveyed the room. Couples celebrating anniversaries, business dinners, first dates, all of them playing out dramas of their own, none of them knowing that in the corner sat a man whose net worth exceeded their combined lifetimes of earnings. His server appeared, a young woman named Melissa, according to her name tag. "Good evening, sir. I have a 25-year Macallan for you." She set down the glass. Marcus had no idea what 25-year Macallan cost, but he'd learn later it was $120 per pour. "Thank you. Actually, Melissa, I have a question. Were you working here last Thursday night?" She hesitated, clearly uncertain if this was a complaint. "Yes, sir." "Do you remember a situation at a table near here?" A woman served her husband divorce papers while her boyfriend watched. Melissa's face colored. I do remember that, sir. It was very awkward." "I'm sure it was. I was the husband." Her eyes went wide. "Oh my God, I'm so sorry. It's fine," Marcus said gently. "I'm not here to cause problems. I actually wanted to thank you. You were kind that night. You didn't gawk. You just did your job with grace." Melissa looked like she might cry. "Thank you, sir. That's very kind of you to say. What's your full name, Melissa?" "Melissa Torres." "What? I'm going to mention to the management that you provided exceptional service. You deserve recognition for how you handled difficult situations." She smiled, genuinely touched. "Thank you so much. Can I get you anything else?" "Not yet. I'm actually expecting someone. When they arrive, please show them to this table." "Of course." Melissa left, and Marcus sipped his scotch. It was smooth, complex, nothing like the cheap whiskey he'd bought on sale at Safeway. He could get used to this, he realized. The comfort, the quality, the small luxuries that made life feel less like survival and more like actual living. His phone buzzed. A text from Patricia. They just made a reservation. 7:15 p.m. Marcus smiled. Everything was falling into place. At 7:12 p.m., Adriana and Clayton walked through the front door of the Gilded Rose. Marcus saw them before they saw him. Adriana looked radiant in a red dress that was definitely new, definitely expensive. Clayton wore a tailored suit and the same arrogant expression Marcus remembered from a week ago. They were laughing about something, comfortable and easy, the way people laugh when they've gotten away with something. The hostess greeted them. Marcus watched the conversation, Adriana giving her name, the hostess checking the computer, leading them toward their table, which happened to pass directly by Marcus's. Adriana saw him first. Her step faltered. Her smile froze. "Marcus." He looked up from his scotch, genuinely surprised, as if this meeting was coincidental. "Adriana." "Clayton." What a small world. Clayton's eyes narrowed, clearly suspicious. "What are you doing here?" "Having dinner." Marcus gestured to his table. "Same as you, I imagine." Adriana was staring at his suit, his watch, the way he sat in his chair, relaxed, confident, nothing like the broken man who'd sat in this restaurant a week ago. "You look different," she said cautiously. "Thank you. I've had an interesting week." Marcus pulled out the manila envelope from the leather messenger bag beside his chair, a bag that had cost $2,000 and looked like it. "Actually, since you're here, This saves me the trouble of mailing these. Your divorce papers. Signed, as requested. He held out the envelope. Adriana took it like it might be poisoned. I also had my lawyer prepare a settlement agreement. Marcus continued. I think you'll find it more than fair. I'm offering you $10,000 as a gesture of goodwill, along with your car and personal belongings as outlined in your original petition. Clayton's expression shifted from suspicion to confusion. $10,000? For what? It's generous, Adriana said quickly, opening the envelope and skimming the documents. More than fair, actually. I thought we'd split about $3,000, Clayton said. Where are you getting? It doesn't matter, Adriana interrupted, shooting him a look that said shut up and let me handle this. Marcus is being gracious. We should accept it and move on. Marcus watched this exchange with interest. Adriana had already decided not to tell Clayton about the money. Already calculating, already keeping secrets. Some things never changed. There is one other thing, Marcus said casually. The settlement includes language that you're not entitled to any future inheritances or income one might receive. Standard language, but my lawyer insisted. I assume that's not a problem. Adriana barely glanced at that section. Of course not. You don't have any family left anyway. Right? No family. Marcus took another sip of his scotch. So if you could sign page 8 and page 14, we can make this official. The hostess appeared, hovering uncertainly. Mr. Westbrook? Your table is ready. Give us a minute, Clayton snapped. Actually, Marcus said, pulling a pen from his jacket. This will only take a moment. Here, Adriana. She took the pen and signed quickly, barely reading the paragraphs that were signing away her rights to $3.7 billion. Her signature was rushed, eager, ready to close this chapter and move on to her new life with its new luxuries. There, she said, handing the papers back. We're done. We're done, Marcus agreed. He tucked the papers back into his bag. Thank you for being prompt. I appreciate clean endings. Clayton was still staring at Marcus with confusion. How are you paying for dinner here? And that suit? And that watch? What? Clayton, Adriana hissed. Let it go. But Marcus smiled, deciding to give them just a hint. Just a small glimpse of what they'd thrown away. I had some unexpected good fortune this week, he said lightly. A family matter that resolved in my favor. Nothing that concerns you, of course. Good fortune? Clayton's eyes narrowed. What kind of? Their table, sir. The hostess interrupted desperately. Adriana grabbed Clayton's arm. Come on. Let's just go. As they turned to leave, Marcus added one more thing, his voice perfectly pleasant. Oh, and Clayton? I heard you're having some trouble with your Portland project. Foundation issues, isn't it? I hope that resolves well for you. Construction delays can be so expensive. Clayton froze. How do you know about Portland? Marcus just smiled. Seattle's a small town in some circles. Enjoy your dinner. They walked to their table, and Marcus watched Adriana's hand shake as she opened her menu. She was confused, disoriented, trying to process how the man she dismissed as worthless was suddenly sitting in the Gilded Rose like he owned it. Because, Marcus thought with quiet satisfaction, he did own it. But they didn't know that yet. Hold on. Can we just pause and appreciate what just happened? Marcus just watched Adriana sign away her rights to $3.7 billion, and she has no idea. Drop a face screaming in fear if your mind is absolutely blown right now. And you know what? We're not even close to done. We still have Clayton's reckoning coming. We still have the moment when they realize what they lost. Hit that like button, drop your favorite emoji in the comments if you're Team Marcus, and buckle up, because this story is about to get even better. Marcus finished his dinner, pan-seared halibut with truffle risotto, a dish so perfectly prepared it almost made him forget why he was there, while watching Adriana and Clayton from across the dining room. They were arguing, quietly, but unmistakably. Clayton kept gesturing, clearly asking questions Adriana didn't want to answer. She kept shaking her head, pushing her food around her plate without eating, occasionally glancing over at Marcus with an expression he couldn't quite read. Confusion? Regret? Fear? His phone buzzed. A text from Victoria. The report on Westbrook is ready. It's extensive. Are you sure you want to proceed? Marcus typed back, send it. The document arrived seconds later. Marcus opened it and began reading. Clayton Westbrook had built his real estate empire on leverage and lies. The Portland Tower project that Marcus had mentioned? 3 months behind schedule and $4.2 million over budget, Due to foundation problems Clayton had tried to conceal from investors. The Phoenix Plaza development failed inspection twice, with Clayton bribing inspectors to pass it the third time. A fact discovered by an investigative journalist, but not yet published. The flagship office building in downtown Seattle that housed Westbrook Development Group's headquarters, leased from a subsidiary of Pacific Northwest Properties, which was owned by Zenith Holdings, which was now owned by Marcus. The lease came up for renewal in 60 days. But there was more. Clayton had been courting a group of wealthy investors for his next big project, a mixed-use development in Bellevue that he'd promised would triple their money in 5 years. The investor deck was full of inflated projections and outright fabrications about comparable properties. One of those investors, Marcus noted with interest, was dining 3 tables away from Clayton right now. Richard Chen, no relation to Marcus, a tech executive who'd made his fortune in cloud computing and was looking to diversify. Marcus stood, straightened his jacket, and walked over to Richard's table. "Excuse me, Mr. Chen? I'm sorry to interrupt your dinner." Richard looked up, clearly trying to place him. "Yes. My name is Marcus Chen. I noticed you're here tonight, and I thought I should introduce myself. I'm the new majority owner of Zenith Holdings and its various subsidiaries." Richard's eyes widened. "Zenith Holdings? The James Chen estate." "Exactly. James was my uncle. I've been reviewing the portfolio and noticed you've been a valuable partner on several projects over the years. I wanted to thank you personally for your collaboration." Richard stood and shook Marcus's hand. "I'm honored. Your uncle was a brilliant man. Very private, but brilliant. I'm sorry for your loss." "Thank you. Actually, I wonder if I could ask you something. Purely informational. I'm still learning the landscape. Are you familiar with Westbrook Development Group?" Richard's expression soured slightly. "Unfortunately, yes. Clayton Westbrook has been pitching me on a Bellevue project." "Why do you ask?" "I'm doing due diligence on various players in the local market. Would you mind sharing your impression of Mr. Westbrook's operation?" Richard glanced around, then lowered his voice. "Between you and me? I'm skeptical. His numbers don't add up. His track record has some concerning gaps. And I've heard rumors about the Portland project that make me nervous. I'm probably going to pass on his pitch." "Smart decision," Marcus said. "If you'd like, I can have my team send you our analysis of his projects. Just as a courtesy, one chin to another." Richard smiled. "I'd appreciate that. Are you planning to be active in the business, or more hands-off like your uncle?" "Active," Marcus said. "Very active. My uncle taught me to pay attention to details. I'm finding that very useful." They exchanged contact information, and Marcus returned to his table. As he sat down, he saw Clayton watching him, his face red with confusion and growing anger. Good. Let him wonder. Marcus paid his check, $3.40 for dinner and drinks, an amount that would have been unthinkable a week ago, and left a $200 tip for Melissa with a note. "Thank you for your kindness. MC." As he walked toward the exit, he passed Adriana and Clayton's table one more time. "Have a wonderful evening," he said pleasantly. Adriana looked up at him, and Marcus saw something new in her eyes. Not contempt, not pity, but uncertainty. The first crack in her confidence. "Marcus," she said, "wait." He stopped. "Can we talk? Just for a minute." Clayton started to object, but Adriana silenced him with a look. She stood and followed Marcus to a quiet corner near the bar. "What's going on?" she asked quietly. "That suit. That watch. The way you're acting. You're not you." "I'm exactly me," Marcus said. "You just never really looked." "The settlement papers mentioned a future inheritance. Did something happen?" Marcus could have lied, could have deflected, but he decided on something more elegant. The truth, delivered in a way she'd never believe. "My uncle died recently. Left me some things. I'm still sorting through it all." "Things like what?" "Marcus, if you inherited money, I'm entitled to." "You signed the settlement 15 minutes ago, Adriana. You're not entitled to anything. We're divorced. Or we will be, once the judge approves the paperwork. But if you knew about an inheritance, you should have disclosed." "I disclosed exactly what I was legally required to disclose." "You asked for a divorce. I gave you one. You asked for a fair settlement. I gave you more than fair. We're done." "How much?" she pressed. "How much did he leave you?" Marcus smiled. "Enough." "Enough for what?" "Enough to be happy. Enough to help people. Enough to build the life I want instead of the life I could afford." He looked at her directly. "Enough to know that you left me for the wrong reasons." Adriana's face went pale. Marcus, if you came into serious money, we could talk. We could work something out. The papers aren't filed yet. They will be by Monday morning. And even if they weren't, why would I want to work something out with someone who served me divorce papers at our anniversary dinner? Who laughed while her boyfriend threw money at me like a tip? Who called me financially irrelevant in front of 50 people? I was angry, Adriana said, her voice cracking. I was frustrated with our situation. But if things are different now, they are different, but not in the way you think. Marcus's voice was gentle but final. Adriana, you didn't leave me because we were poor. You left me because you thought I'd always be poor. Because you thought I was the ceiling, not the foundation. You saw what I couldn't give you instead of what I did give you. Loyalty, honesty, love. The money doesn't change that. It just makes it more obvious. Tears were running down her face now, ruining her perfect makeup. I made a mistake. You made a choice. Own it. Marcus turned and walked toward the exit. Behind him, he heard Adriana saying something else, but he didn't stop. Didn't look back. Thomas was waiting with the Mercedes. Home, sir. Home. Marcus agreed, though he wasn't entirely sure where that was anymore. Monday morning, Marcus sat in Victoria's office reviewing the weekend's developments. The divorce paperwork is filed, Robert reported. Judge will approve it in about 30 days. Miss Torres, your ex-wife, hasn't tried to contact you since Saturday? She's called 17 times, Marcus said. I haven't answered. Good. Don't. Any communication gives her an opening to claim you misled her or withheld information. The settlement is signed. Let it stand. What about Westbrook? Marcus asked. Victoria pulled up her tablet. This is where things get interesting. After you spoke with Richard Chen on Saturday, Richard did some digging. He contacted 3 other investors who were considering Westbrook's Bellevue project. As of this morning, all of them have withdrawn their interest. Meaning Clayton's new development is dead. He can't secure financing without those anchor investors. He's already extended himself on the Portland project, which is hemorrhaging money. And in 60 days, his office lease comes up for renewal. Marcus considered this. What would happen if we didn't renew his lease? David Hernandez spoke up. He'd have to relocate, which is expensive and time-consuming. It would also signal to the market that something's wrong, that his landlord doesn't want him. Could trigger a crisis of confidence among his remaining investors. And if we did renew it, we could negotiate terms. Higher rent, stricter clauses, performance guarantees. David paused. Or we could offer him a very attractive renewal, with conditions attached. Marcus raised an eyebrow. What kind of conditions? Full financial disclosure. Third-party audits of all active projects. Correction of any code violations or inspection failures. Basically, we force him to clean up his act or lose everything. Can we do that legally? Absolutely, Robert said. As his landlord, we have significant leverage. And given the inspection issues in Phoenix, we could make a case that his business practices represent a liability to the property. Marcus leaned back in his chair. The old Marcus, the bookkeeper who counted every penny, would have been uncomfortable with this level of manipulation. But the new Marcus, the one who'd been humiliated and dismissed, found a certain justice in it. Let's give him a choice, Marcus said. Offer him a lease renewal at reasonable terms, but require the audits and corrections. If he's actually running a legitimate business, he'll pass. If he's not, he'll either have to fix his problems or walk away. That's surprisingly merciful, Victoria observed. I don't want to destroy him, Marcus said honestly. I just want him to understand that actions have consequences. That throwing money at people and taking what you want doesn't work when someone else has more power than you do. And if he refuses the terms? Then he refuses, and he loses his office space. Natural consequences. Victoria nodded approvingly. I'll have the offer drafted by end of day. One more thing, Marcus said. The Phoenix inspection issues. The journalist who discovered them but hasn't published yet. Who is it? Victoria checked her notes. Sarah Martinez. Writes for Seattle Business Journal. She's been investigating corruption in commercial construction for 6 months. Contact her. Tell her we'd like to provide background information on our properties and our due diligence processes. Offer her access to our audit findings on the Westbrook properties we control. Don't tell her to publish anything. Just give her facts and let her do her job. You're going after him publicly? David asked. I'm not going after him at all. I'm just ensuring that the truth is available to someone whose job is finding truth. What she does with it is her decision. The team exchanged glances. Marcus could see them recalculating their assessment of him. He wasn't going to be a passive billionaire who just collected dividends and attended charity galas. He was going to be active, engaged, strategic. Anything else? Victoria asked. Yes, I want to establish that foundation my uncle mentioned. The James Chen Foundation. I want it focused on 3 areas: financial literacy education for underserved communities, small business loans for immigrants, and housing initiatives for working families. That's ambitious, David said. What kind of initial funding were you thinking? $100 million to start. More if needed. The room went quiet. $100 million was a substantial commitment, even for someone with Marcus's wealth. You're serious, Victoria said. Completely. My mother worked as a bookkeeper making $35,000 a year when she had millions in the bank. She did that to teach me something. I'm not going to waste that lesson by just accumulating more money. I want to help people who are where I was, struggling, but honest. Working hard, but not getting ahead. Those are the people who deserve support. Victoria smiled, genuine warmth in her expression. Your uncle would be very proud. I hope so, because I'm going to spend the rest of my life trying to deserve what he gave me. Can we talk about character for a second? Marcus could have destroyed Clayton, could have buried him financially, could have made him suffer the way Clayton made him suffer. But instead, he's giving him a chance. He's building a foundation. He's helping people. If you believe that true power isn't about revenge, but about becoming someone worthy of your blessings, drop a crown in the comments. And listen, we're almost to the end, but the final chapter is going to break your heart in the best way possible. Don't go anywhere. November in Seattle arrived with its typical gray skies and persistent drizzle, but Marcus had learned to appreciate the weather. It kept things honest. No illusions. Just rain and work and the slow, steady progress of building something meaningful. The James Chen Foundation had officially launched in August with a ceremony at the Seattle Convention Center. 500 people attended. Community leaders, educators, nonprofit directors, and the kinds of people who actually did the work of helping others rather than just talking about it. Marcus had hired Victoria Hartwell as executive director. She'd confessed that after 30 years of managing rich people's estates, she wanted to do something that mattered. The foundation had been her redemption, and she'd thrown herself into it with the energy of someone who'd finally found her purpose. They'd already distributed $12 million in small business loans to immigrant entrepreneurs. They'd launched financial literacy workshops in 15 Seattle schools. They'd broken ground on an affordable housing project in Rainier Valley that would provide homes for 40 working families. And Marcus showed up to every single event. Not as a figurehead cutting ribbons and giving speeches, but as a volunteer. He taught budget worksheets to teenagers. He reviewed business plans for loan applicants. He helped frame walls at the housing project, swinging a hammer alongside union carpenters who had no idea the guy in the work gloves was worth billions. He'd also kept his job at Morrison & Associates. 3 days a week, he went to the office and did bookkeeping work for small businesses. His boss, confused but accommodating, had asked why Marcus didn't just retire. Because I like the work, Marcus had said simply. And because staying grounded in regular people's reality helps me make better decisions at the foundation. The inheritance had changed Marcus's circumstances, but he was determined not to let it change his character. The Adriana situation had resolved itself with surprising finality. She'd tried to contest the divorce settlement in late June, hiring an expensive lawyer and claiming Marcus had withheld material information about his assets. The judge had reviewed the timeline. Divorce petition filed May 16th, inheritance transferred May 19th, and dismissed her claim in about 15 minutes. Washington law was clear. Post-filing assets weren't community property. The settlement stood. She'd also tried reaching out personally. Emails, texts, even showing up at the Fairmont Olympic, before Marcus moved into a modest house on Bainbridge Island that he'd bought with cash. Each message was a variation on the same theme. She'd made a mistake. She wanted another chance. She'd always loved him. Marcus never responded. He simply forwarded everything to Robert, who sent back formal legal notices reminding her that all communication should go through attorneys. Eventually, the messages stopped. Through mutual acquaintances, Marcus had heard that Adriana and Clayton's relationship had imploded by September. Apparently, Clayton had expected her to contribute financially to their lifestyle once the divorce settled, And when she only had $10,000 instead of the windfall she'd assumed was coming, he'd lost interest fast. She was back in a modest apartment in Capitol Hill now, working as an administrative assistant, living the kind of life she'd tried so desperately to escape. Marcus felt no satisfaction in that. Just a quiet sadness that she'd thrown away something real in pursuit of something shiny, and had ended up with neither. Clayton's unraveling had been more dramatic. The lease renewal offer had come with exactly the terms Marcus had specified: reasonable rent, but mandatory third-party audits and correction of all inspection failures within 90 days. Clayton had refused, called it harassment and retaliation, and threatened to sue. Marcus's team had calmly pointed out that as the property owner, they had every right to set lease terms, and Clayton was free to lease space elsewhere. He'd tried, but by then, Sarah Martinez's article in Seattle Business Journal had published structural failures and financial fabrications inside one developer's troubled projects was thoroughly researched, carefully sourced, and devastating. The Phoenix inspections, the Portland Foundation problems, the inflated investor projections, the pattern of cutting corners and hiding problems. Clayton's remaining investors had fled. His bank had called his loans. By October, Westbrook Development Group had filed for bankruptcy. The last Marcus had heard, Clayton was working for a larger development firm in Spokane, no longer the boss, but an employee, learning what it felt like to be on the other side of power. Again, Marcus felt no satisfaction. Just a quiet confirmation that the universe did eventually balance its books. On a rainy Thursday afternoon in mid-November, Marcus was leaving the foundation offices when he literally bumped into someone carrying a stack of folders. Papers scattered across the wet pavement. "Oh God, I'm so sorry." The woman knelt to gather the documents, and Marcus knelt beside her to help. "My fault entirely. I wasn't watching where I—" He looked up and froze. The woman was beautiful, but not in the polished, calculated way Adriana had been beautiful. She had warm brown eyes, natural curly hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, and wore scrubs under a rain jacket. No makeup, no jewelry except a simple watch. She looked tired but kind. "Are these medical files?" Marcus asked, noticing the letterhead as he handed her a folder. "Yeah, I'm a pediatric surgeon at Harborview. I was just dropping off a grant proposal for the Foundation's healthcare initiative." She stood, brushing water off the folders. "I'm Dr. Sophia Reyes, and you've probably saved me from having to reprint 50 pages, so thank you. Marcus Chen, and I work for the Foundation, so technically those documents are going to me eventually anyway." "You work for, wait, Chen? As in James Chen? As in the Foundation's founder?" "Benefactor," Marcus corrected. "The real founder was my uncle. I'm just trying to do what he would have wanted." Sophia studied him with interest. "I was expecting someone older. The grant materials all talk about James Chen like he was this mysterious elderly billionaire. He was. I'm just the nephew who's trying to figure out how to spend his money wisely." "Well, if you're the one reviewing grants, I should probably not start by dropping medical files on you in the rain." She smiled, and Marcus felt something shift in his chest. "How about I buy you coffee as an apology for making you drop them? There's a place around the corner." Sophia hesitated, then shrugged. "Sure, but only if we can talk about the grant proposal. I've been working on this mobile pediatric clinic idea for 3 years, and I'm not above bribery if it helps get kids access to healthcare." They talked for 3 hours. Not about money, not about success or status or any of the things Adriana had valued. They talked about Sophia's work, how she'd grown up in Honduras, how her family had immigrated when she was 12, how she'd worked 3 jobs to put herself through medical school, how she'd chosen pediatric surgery because she wanted to help kids who couldn't help themselves. They talked about Marcus's journey too. He found himself being honest in a way he hadn't been with anyone except Victoria and his sister. He told her about Adriana, about the Gilded Rose, about inheriting wealth and not knowing what to do with it. "So you teach budget workshops?" Sophia asked, stirring her third coffee. "A billionaire teaching teenagers how to save money. A guy who understands what it's like to count every dollar, teaching teenagers the skills I wish someone had taught me earlier," Marcus corrected. "The money didn't make me smart about money. Poverty did that. I'm just trying to share those lessons." "That's—" Sophia shook her head. "That's remarkable. Most people who come into money forget what it was like to not have it. My uncle and my mother made sure I'd never forget. They could have helped me at any time, But they let me struggle because they knew struggle builds character in ways comfort never can. Do you resent that? Marcus thought about it. I used to. But now I'm grateful. Because when my wife left me for someone richer, when I was sitting on that bench by the ferry terminal thinking my life was over, I knew who I was. Money didn't define me. Poverty didn't define me. I defined me. And that's a gift worth more than any inheritance. Sophia looked at him with something Marcus hadn't seen in a long time. Genuine respect. I like you, Marcus Chen, she said simply. You're not what I expected a billionaire to be. What did you expect? I don't know. Arrogant? Detached? Someone who talks about impact and metrics, but doesn't actually know what it's like to struggle. You're real. That's rare. They exchanged numbers. Sophia had surgery the next morning. A 6-year-old with a heart defect, complex and delicate, but she suggested they meet again the following week to discuss the grant proposal. And maybe we could talk about non-medical things too, she added, her smile shy but hopeful. If you're interested. I'm very interested, Marcus said honestly. As he watched her walk back toward Harborview in the rain, Marcus felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. Possibility. Not the possibility of wealth or power or revenge. Just the possibility of connection with someone who saw him, really saw him, and liked what she found. Stop. Just stop for a second. Are you crying? Because I'm crying. This is what it's all about, right here. Not the money. Not the revenge. Not the satisfaction of watching your enemies fall. It's about becoming someone worthy of your blessings. It's about meeting someone like Sophia who loves you for who you are, not what you have. If this story touched your heart, if you believe that integrity and character matter more than wealth and status, I need you to do 3 things right now. 1. Drop your country one more time in the comments. Let's see how global this message went. 2. Smash that like button if you're Team Marcus. 3. Subscribe and turn on notifications because stories like this is what we're all about. Real struggles, real growth, real redemption. Thank you for being here. Thank you for staying till the end. Now go out there and be the kind of person who deserves their blessings. Red Heart. Marcus stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of the James Chun Foundation's new headquarters, watching Seattle's skyline glow in the December sunset. The building was modest by billionaire standards, 5 stories in the Central District, renovated from an old warehouse, with solar panels on the roof and community meeting spaces on the ground floor. Victoria appeared beside him, tablet in hand. The annual report is ready for your review. Want the summary or the full breakdown? Summary first. We distributed $47 million this year. 237 small business loans, 89% still operating successfully. Financial literacy programs reached 12,000 students across Washington state. The Rainier Valley Housing Project is complete and fully occupied. The mobile pediatric clinic, Victoria smiled knowingly. Sophia's project has served 3,400 children who previously had no access to specialists. The clinic, Marcus said, that's the one I'm most proud of. I noticed. You've visited it 17 times in 6 months. I'm dating the founder. I'm required to be supportive. You're dating the founder because she's brilliant and kind and couldn't care less that you're wealthy, Victoria corrected. Which, if I may say so, shows excellent judgment on both sides. Marcus smiled. Sophia had refused to accept any special treatment. She'd insisted on paying for half their dates. She drove a 10-year-old Honda and lived in a small apartment near the hospital. When Marcus had offered to buy her a house, she'd looked at him like he'd suggested flying to the moon. I like my apartment, she'd said firmly. And I like that when you visit, it's because you want to see me, not because the surroundings are impressive. Don't try to change me with money, Marcus. I've seen what that does to people. He'd fallen in love with her in that moment. Really, truly in love in a way he'd never been with Adriana. Because Sophia saw his wealth as a responsibility, not a benefit. She pushed him to do more, give more, be more. She challenged him when he got complacent and celebrated him when he succeeded. She made him better. Speaking of which, Victoria continued, your sister called. She wants to know if you're bringing Sophia to Christmas dinner. Already confirmed. Sophia is taking a rare day off. She wants to meet Emily. And I think she's going to ask if we're serious. Are you? Marcus turned from the window to face Victoria directly. I'm 33 years old. I've been divorced, humiliated, and rebuilt. I've learned what matters and what doesn't. Sophia is the first person I've met who loves me for my values instead of my portfolio. So yes, Victoria. We're serious. Good. You deserve happiness. So do you. When are you going to retire? Actually retire, I mean. Not this working 70 hours a week retirement. Victoria laughed. When I find something I care about more than this foundation. Which, given how much I care about this foundation, might be never. They stood in comfortable silence, watching the city prepare for night. Somewhere out there, families were having dinner. Kids were doing homework. People were working late shifts and counting their tips and dreaming of better days. Marcus thought about the person he'd been a year and a half ago. The bookkeeper who took the bus to save money. The husband who believed love would be enough. The man who got divorce papers at his anniversary dinner and thought his life was over. That man had no idea what was coming. No idea that humiliation would become transformation. That loss would become gain. That the worst night of his life would be the catalyst for becoming someone he could actually respect. You know what's funny? Marcus said. If Adriana had stayed. If she'd been patient. If she'd believed in me instead of just my paycheck. She'd be here now. She'd have everything she wanted. But you wouldn't, Victoria pointed out. You'd be with someone who loved your money, not your character. You'd always wonder if she really saw you. True. Sophia sees me. Even when I don't want to be seen. Even when I'm making mistakes or being stubborn. She sees the actual me and somehow still likes what she finds. That's called love, Marcus. The real kind. The kind your uncle and your mother hoped you'd find. His phone buzzed. A text from Sophia. Surgery went perfectly. 8-year-old girl with congenital heart defect, completely repaired. She's going to have a normal life. I'm crying happy tears in the break room. Love you. Marcus smiled and typed back. You're amazing. I'm so proud of you. Dinner tonight? I'm buying, but only because I know you'll argue about it, and that makes me laugh. Her response was immediate. Fine, but nowhere fancy. I'm in scrubs and exhausted, and I want tacos. Tacos it is. The place on Capitol Hill. Perfect. 7:30. I'll be there. Marcus pocketed his phone and turned to Victoria. I need to go. I have a date with a pediatric surgeon who just saved a child's life and wants tacos. That sounds perfect. Go. Be happy. That's what your uncle wanted for you. As Marcus rode the elevator down to the ground floor, he thought about Uncle Jimmy's letter. About the line that had stuck with him. Wealth reveals what was always there. The inheritance had revealed Adriana's priorities. Comfort over commitment. Appearance over authenticity. Money over meaning. It had revealed Clayton's character. Arrogance without foundation. Power without integrity. The hollow satisfaction of taking what you wanted instead of earning what you deserved. But it had also revealed Marcus's own character. That he could have power without abusing it. That he could have wealth without it corrupting him. That he could be humiliated and betrayed and still choose kindness over cruelty, justice over revenge, growth over bitterness. The money had given him options, but his choices had defined him. And he'd chosen well. Marcus arrived at the taco place 15 minutes early. It was tiny, cheap, the kind of place where you ordered at the counter and sat at picnic tables. The same kind of place he'd eaten at when he was actually poor, not just pretending to be normal. Sophia walked in at exactly 7:30, still in scrubs, hair pulled back, face exhausted but radiant. She slid into the seat across from him and reached for his hand. Hi, she said simply. Hi yourself. Tell me about the surgery. She did. For 20 minutes. She described the procedure with technical precision and emotional investment. She talked about the girl's parents, who'd been saving for years to afford this surgery, who'd cried when Sophia told them their daughter would be okay. She talked about her surgical team, about the challenge of working on a heart smaller than her fist, about the moment when the repair held and the heart started beating normally. This is why I do it, Sophia said. That little girl gets to grow up. She gets to run and play and fall in love and have her own kids someday. Because we had the knowledge and the skill and the resources to fix what was broken. The mobile clinic made that possible, Marcus said. You found her during one of the screenings. The clinic you funded made that possible, Sophia corrected. Her family couldn't afford to take her to a specialist. They didn't even know she had a problem until we showed up in their neighborhood with portable ultrasound equipment. Your money, Marcus, saved her life. Your skills saved her life. I just provided the tools. And that's why I love you, Sophia said, squeezing his hand. Because you understand that distinction. You don't take credit for things you didn't do. You don't need the glory, just the results. They ate tacos, al pastor and carne asada and vegetables, and talked about everything except money. About the upcoming holidays. About Sophia's family in Honduras. About Marcus's sister's new baby. About whether they should adopt a dog. Normal things. Beautiful things. The kind of conversation that would have bored Adriana to tears, but filled Marcus with contentment. As they walked back to Sophia's apartment, she'd insisted he park there so they could walk together. Marcus felt something crystallize in his mind. Sophia, I need to tell you something. She stopped walking, concern flickering across her face. Okay, that sounds serious. It is. Not bad, just important. Marcus took a breath. When my wife left me, when I was sitting in that restaurant being humiliated, I thought my life was over. I thought I'd failed at everything that mattered. And then I inherited this money, and I had this moment where I could have become cruel. Could have used wealth as a weapon. Could have turned into the kind of person who measures worth in dollars. But you didn't. No, I didn't. Because my uncle and my mother taught me something without words. That character isn't what you do when life is easy. It's what you do when life is hard. It's the choices you make when no one's watching and nothing's forcing you to be good except your own sense of who you want to be. Sophia was listening intently, her eyes never leaving his face. Meeting you, Marcus continued, reminded me that none of the rest matters if you're not connecting with people who see your actual soul. You don't care that I'm wealthy. You care that I'm honest and that I show up and that I'm trying to help people. That's what you love about me. It is, Sophia confirmed. And I love that about you too. That you measure success and lives saved instead of bank balances. That you're exhausted from a 16-hour surgery, but still show up to eat tacos with me, because you promised you would. That you make me want to be better, not richer. Marcus, where is this going? He smiled. I'm saying that I know who I am now. I'm saying that wealth revealed me to myself, and I like what I found. I'm saying that I'm ready. Ready for what? Ready for everything. Ready to build a life that matters. Ready to do it with someone who makes me better. Ready to stop treating this as temporary and start treating it as permanent. Sophia's eyes widened. Marcus Chen, are you? Not proposing. Not yet. We've only been dating 6 months, and I'm not rushing this. But I'm declaring my intentions. He took both her hands. I intend to love you for as long as you'll let me. I intend to support your work and your dreams. I intend to be the kind of partner who shows up, who listens, who grows with you instead of expecting you to change for me. And eventually, when the time is right, I intend to ask you to marry me. Sophia was crying, but she was also laughing. You're declaring your intentions? What are you, a Victorian gentleman? I'm a guy who got blindsided by divorce once and doesn't want to make that mistake again. I want you to know where I'm headed. I want you to have time to decide if you're headed there too. No surprises. No games. Just honesty. She pulled him into a hug, burying her face in his shoulder. I'm headed there too, she whispered. I didn't want to say it first because I didn't want to scare you. But I'm completely, impossibly in love with you, Marcus Chen. With the real you. The one who counts money because it matters, not because he's stingy. The one who wears work gloves at construction sites because he actually wants to help. The one who respects my refusal to let you buy me things because he understands I need to maintain my own identity. They stood on the sidewalk in the rain, holding each other, two people who'd both struggled and both emerged stronger, who'd both learned that wealth was a tool, not a destination, and that love was about seeing someone clearly and choosing them anyway. So, Marcus said eventually, pulling back to look at her, tacos again next week? Sophia laughed. Tacos again next week. And the week after that. And for as long as you keep showing up in your normal clothes, acting like a normal person, treating me like I'm extraordinary not because of what I can give you, but because of who I am. Deal. They walked the rest of the way to Sophia's apartment in comfortable silence, their hands intertwined, the rain falling softly around them. And Marcus thought, this is what Uncle Jimmy meant. This is wealth that actually matters. Not the billions in the bank. Not the properties or the investments or the power to change lives through charitable donations. But this moment, this connection, this choice to love and be loved for reasons that had nothing to do with money and everything to do with character. He'd lost a marriage. He'd gained a fortune. But most importantly, he'd found himself. And that, Marcus realized, was the real inheritance. Not the money Uncle Jimmy left behind, but the opportunity to discover who he was when wealth wasn't an obstacle or an excuse. He was Marcus Chen, former bookkeeper, current philanthropist, future husband to someone who saw him. And for the first time in his life, that was more than enough. It was everything. Thank you for staying with Marcus's journey from beginning to end. This story is about more than revenge or inheritance. It's about the truth that our character is forged in struggle, revealed in power, and proven in the choices we make when no one's forcing us to be good. If this story moved you, inspired you, or made you think differently about wealth, struggle, or what really matters in life, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. Drop your final thoughts in the comments. Tell me what resonated with you. Tell me your own story of transformation. Remember, wealth reveals what was always there. Make sure what's there is worth revealing. Until next time, keep choosing character over convenience, integrity over ease, and love that sees your soul over love that sees your bank account. You're worth more than you know. Go prove it.